So welcome everyone. I'm Barbara Tien here at Project Kin, and I am delighted to open up this first of our Roots Tech project party. And I am thrilled today to be welcoming Karla. Karla, I'll let you introduce your own last name. Forgive me if so I don't
That's
garble
okay.
it.
It's Karla von Fumetti Stout, and I guarantee you I went all through school, and most people, we were more often called von Spaghetti than von Fumetti. So
The,
it's
the
not
re
unusual.
repetition's very helpful, though. Von Fumetti Stout. Thank you.
Fumetti
And
Stout.
it's a delight to have you all here and participating in this program. This is the first of count of 6 events we're doing during Roots Tech, each nice, short, and tight. And I'm hoping that this gives us a way to all get to know each other and follow along with the Roots Tech program. So keeping it short and tight, I'm going to turn it to you, Karla, and go ahead and take it away at around 30 minutes after the hour or up on the top of the hour. I'll plan to turn off the recording and we can again continue the conversation. So with that, take it away, Karla.
Okay, Barbara actually sent me some questions, so I sort of have a format I'm following through.
Oh, that's right.
If somebody has a question as we're going through, feel free to ask it, but you might just keep it till the end too, and we can go into more detail on some things.
Sure.
One of the things that Barbara asked me was, did I receive any archives from my own family? And I did. I was lucky enough. I had a great-grandfather who handed down a lot of items of documents and photos. They went to my grandfather and to my father and eventually to me of German documents and photos. My mother, when she passed, I inherited an awful lot of her old photos and the manuscript of a book she wrote the last 2 years that she was living, which is really a treasure to me. My maternal grandmother kept a scrapbook. It's evidence of the poverty they lived in, the type of scrapbook that it's based on, but it covers time period from about 1920s through the 1950s in their life with news clippings and recipes and invitations and different events. And it really tells a story of the things, of course, that she was interested in, but also what her family's life was to some extent like. I didn't start out with a great love for genealogy. My one grandfather had a strong interest, and as a child, when we would go to visit, we didn't see him often, and he didn't really care for children, but he loved his family history. And so he would lay out this big family tree, and he would talk about this person and that person, and I would just be like, these people are from the other side of the world, and they're dead. I had zero interest. But after that same grandfather passed, my father inherited those 3 boxes of German documents that I was talking about and photos. And I went to Iowa to visit my dad, and we spent the better part of a week opening these fragile documents using a German-English dictionary that, because we didn't have the computer at that point, to be able to do translations for us. And so we sat and transcribed onto a legal pad what we thought these things more or less talked about or what they were said. And it took us a better part of a week. And so my dad, at the end of this visit, and we're putting things away carefully, he says, can you put this in some type of order so we don't ever have to do this again? And I would never have rolled my eyes at my father, but that was probably the kind of look he got. And I thought to myself, and I told him, I said, how hard can that be? Famous last words. So I flew back to Arkansas, which is where we were living at that point, and just pure coincidence, or sometimes I think fate, our little local library was offering a genealogy course the very next weekend. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go with this and just see what to do with this stuff. So I walked in the door on a Saturday morning and I walked back out, and it's not an overstatement to say I felt like I had been hit over the head. I just fell in love with genealogy. And eventually I think it kind of became a calling. I mean, I jumped in, I started doing my genealogy, my husband's genealogy, friends' genealogy, and pretty soon friends of friends started asking for help. And it occurred to me that I could maybe turn that into a business. We were transferred frequently. It was really kind of hard to maintain a career with all our moves. So I did. I started, once I'd gotten a good handle on what people wanted and expected. I started as a professional genealogist, and I've done that for 25 years. I've taken private clients the entire time, and but also I've done things like probate genealogy, working with a probate lawyer. I did a 3-year project as a volunteer researcher for the Thompson Pell Research Center that's associated with Fort Ticonderoga. A combination of genealogy and sociology and local history, which was really fabulously interesting, and especially to work with some of the archives that they had there that reach back really to before the Rev War. And the last several years, probably 6 or 7 years, I've been doing genetic genealogy. I started out with a friend who really wanted to know her birth mother, her birth parents. And so I went and took some specialized training for that, worked through that with her, and then word travels. So I had several people over the years have asked me to help them find their birth parents. And it just touches my heart. It's one of those things that I have a really hard time saying no to, because I think everybody needs to know who their families are. And at this point, I won't say in my career, but in my life, I guess, my focus is starting to shift. I really want to work on my own family history legacy and be able to share that. So,
boy, there's that L word. You know, you've talked about it. It comes, and Kathy Stone, who's with us here today as well, has talked about this in her programs. You start with that box of stuff, and then you get bitten by the bug. And then you think about all the work you've done for everybody else, but why not my own work? And then you think about your own family, and there's the L word. Go on and tell us about that.
Well, people have different understanding of what they think is a legacy. Some people just think it's whatever's been left to them in a will or estate. To me, your legacy that's been left to you is something of perceived value to you. And in family history legacy items, it can really be anything. A lot of us, I'm sure, have these precious little items that somebody used to own or handle, and they have really no monetary value at all, but they mean the world to you. You have the memories of the people that you knew, your ancestors and people that you were associated with growing up, and stories they may have told you that really never got written down anywhere. There are family values, there's genetics, and particularly on my mother's side of the family, genetics have played a little bit of a role in our family history. So personally, my legacy, I hope, will be my contributions and the things I've learned, the things I've gathered, the documents and so on, but also really important to me is living history. So the things that have happened during my lifetime, from my childhood memories and so on, so that my immediate family's story gets passed on as well.
Yeah, that's so often that is the it's like you're putting back into the pond. You're doing your analysis of the other stuff that you learned and then giving back into the next generation.
Right.
And you've done some interesting things as you've started to find ways to make some sense of this, to go back to your dad's original phrase, to put some order to all of this. Tell us a little bit about how you've done that.
I would guess, like probably a lot of the people who are listening today or whatever, that you've spent a lot of years digging into your family history, and you've accumulated stuff, so much stuff, which the room that I'm in up here, it fills a good bit of the room that I have. I've got a lot of photos, vintage photos. I have paper photos that have really been, generated through my lifetime, all the way through my girls and now grandchildren, and digital photos, thousands of them. Documents, I've got, 3 different file cabinets just full of documents. So birth, marriage, death records, but baptismals, military records, lots of letters, maps. And over the years, I have really developed a really large genealogy database that's full of notes and information. And I have a lot of digitized digital folders of files. And I, over 25 years, did not ever really understand the full amount of digital files I had that related to genealogy until I went through an organizational process. And there's stuff there that I'm sure I saved in the moment thinking, I'll come back to that, and I never did. So there's a lot of that. So information that's shared with me, old emails and conversations, a few tape recorded things, and then all the living history that I've accumulated from my lifetime. So I have a lot of memories that I carry of important things in my ancestors' background. And one of the things since I've started doing all of this and trying to put it together is that I realize some of those stories that seem to be lost they can be recreated using all of those things put together, having enough information from the timelines of their life and photos, stories, or bits and pieces that were passed down to me. And I had always thought in my life I would get to the point where I would do something with everything. I'll write a book. Someday I'll write a book. Maybe I'll write a book for my mom's side and one for my dad's side. But I had never really done anything active about moving into a legacy focused. And my husband came upstairs. This is a few years ago now, and he stood with his hands on his hips. And for the few people who are on here that know Calvin, you can picture him perfectly. And he's looking and he goes, what am I going to do with all of this? Or what are you going to do with all of this so that, your efforts aren't wasted and we end up throwing it away when you die? And I'm like, no. And so it kind of spurred me on at that time. And it was definitely food for thought about, okay, well, when am I going to do all this? Some of you who I'm in email contact with will have seen this before, but I have a quote that I've had pasted up on the wall, and it's in a few of my notebooks, that has always been sort of my stick that poked at me to continue and kept me interested. And it goes something like, the memories that I have will be gone all too soon. They're going to leave the world with me. And just as the memories of my grandfather and my great-grandmother left with them, unless they're given and passed on, it's as if those things had never been. So my focus really switched. It's been about almost 5 years ago now, from doing active research, although I still do research, but what was I going to do with all of this? And who did I really want to share it with? My really big question became, how was I going to share it? And the when just kind of shifted into now. So since that point, I have been focused on trying to create a legacy plan for all of my accumulated things, some to be, shared digitally, but also some to be passed on so that they're not lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that you describe that in terms of the memories, what's going to happen to them. It's as if they had never been if they're not passed on. That's a lovely sentiment. And for those of you who've seen that film this morning during the family search talk, which is breathtaking, the interesting flip on that one is to talk about how you're remembered today, how you have already changed other people's lives and how they have thought about you in remembering you. It's as we go through this, I'm struck also by the do something. It's something that's a phrase that has struck me many times because I came into this from the photo side. Are you going to do something with those photos? Photos are artifacts,
Yeah.
and they're like the tip of the iceberg of everything else that's there. And the do something, and then you've taken it even further to be thinking about it as to they have such a presence in everything that you're doing, and obviously that room, that the do something with it is also, if you don't do something with it to pass them on, to set them up to be passed on, they are lost. Yeah. And for all the work that you've done in putting it all together, that would be a tragic loss. So tell us a little bit about how you've parsed that problem.
Part of what I wanted to do was I kind of shifted my focus to, instead of this theoretical book that I was going to write, I decided I wanted to move into a cloud-based platform of some type, or a shared platform on the internet, to capture the things I had been doing and the stories. Because even though I'm really blessed and I have thoroughly enjoyed all of the things I've been given or accumulated or been told, all my photos and documents, a few heirlooms, I can only own so much. You can only own so much, but we can really share it with so many people. And I wanted to go into the cloud because if I wrote that book, it's static. It's a snapshot in time of whatever's in that book, and life moves on. And so, what I really was envisioning was hopefully having some type of a living archive. We'd all like to see our work carried on, or at least kept. But also because I wanted to be able to reach further into my family, and I felt that anything that was active and anything that I could reach my younger relatives, especially, was just a better plan moving into the future. I wanted that future presence. So that's really why I went into the cloud-based platform.
I love that expression of future presence.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think I think it's innate in all of us. I think we don't want to be forgotten. We don't want our contributions to the lives of our families, or the lives of our families for that matter, to just eventually disappear into the mists of time.
Yeah.
We want to share those things forward, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel every generation.
Yeah.
I think that's really one of the oldest problems with family historians is they would do all this work. It was all paper-based. It didn't often go very farther than their own home. And then somebody would come in and maybe clean out the house and have just no idea. These are just papers. They don't have my name on them. They don't have Dad's name on them. We're just getting rid of them.
And there's no context. In fact, in my family, I have exactly that. I have this amazing treasure trove of my grandmother self-published book, a remarkable book, and it has changed my whole worldview. There's none of the papers to it. I've now learned that the papers are sitting, when the house was cleared out, they're sitting in the attic of a cousin, maybe. Who knows if they're intact at all?
Yeah.
But there was no way to capture that and contextualize it and pass it down to the future. And I think our generation, because this extraordinary technology surge that's happened in our time, is in a unique position to essentially do that, what we used to call in technology, the conversion from circuit to packet, in the sense that it was an artifact and now it's digital and you can do stuff with it. Cloud isn't a solution. It's just a piece of technology that gets to the real thing. The real problem you're trying to solve is the important part. And that was being able to share it now and share it in the future. Right. And sharing it in the future by getting people engaged in it now. And I think that's really absolutely lovely. So you have found your way to an approach to do this. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, historically, I thought when I wasn't going to do the book, I was going to do my own website. And I set one up, got a domain and a WordPress site. And very quickly, to me, I had two problems. The tree was static. I couldn't easily change it. It was just descendancy charts and family group sheets and so on. It wasn't easy for me to change it. It wasn't easy for people to access it. And the other was I did not want to spend my time maintaining a website. I didn't enjoy doing that. So I looked at other options to share the things that I had. One of my favorites that I still use is MemoryWeb, which is a subscription long-term storage archive. It's organizable, and everything you upload to MemoryWeb is saved and preserved in the size and resolution and format that you've uploaded it to. So many photo sites don't do that. They degrade the quality of the image. The other thing that they do, and they're very careful with, is to preserve the metadata that's in your photo images. And for people who aren't familiar with metadata, it is a text file that's embedded in a photo, digital photo, that tells a lot of information about that photo. When was it taken? Maybe where it was located with a geolocator. So there's things that come with the file in a metadata, but you can add to that. So instead of the back of the picture, which quite often gets lost when somebody scans an image, you can put right into that file, like for my grandparents' wedding. I can put Charles and Harriet Kenyon, October 1915, Toma, Wisconsin, wedding photo, things like that. So it's a fabulous site. I still love it. I still use that. I had my own blog, and it was successful. Is successful, I guess, but it was limited in scope because I really could only share stories and photos from that blog. And it was incredibly public, which I wasn't happy with. I look at the analytics, and I'm seeing people from Russia and Brazil and France reading my blogs. And I thought, I have a hard enough time getting my own relatives to read these. Who are these people? And I had no idea. So I worked with a variety of trees, looking for ones that I could share. And there were several. I ruled out the subscription sites like Ancestry and MyHeritage, largely because I couldn't upload a lot of the things I wanted to share, and any documents that I had attached to those trees, a person had to have a subscription site to see. So that was a no-go for me. And so I used several different types of family search, very public, but you couldn't really share living people with other living people. American Ancestors Ancestries was a really nice tree, and it was shareable, but it had, again, limited. So none of them really let me share everything I wanted. A few years ago, I started, I actually found it at RootsTech, a platform called Collectionaire that used a tree format. And the concept was everything that you shared with your tree came in by a website link. So I could attach my blogs. If I wrote about my mother, I could attach it to her. I could bring in photos, and I could bring in that website link for that photo and attach it to my father or to my great-grandfather. Videos from Google Drive and so on. But for me, it worked, wasn't ideal. It wasn't easy to share things or allow input, and I was forever breaking the links, moving things around, and then having to go back and fix them. But it was the best thing that was on the market, really, I thought, at that time. So over time, I knew that what I really wanted was everything that was under one roof, that didn't involve going back and forth from browser tabs and computer files, my blogging site, a tree, a photo storage site. I wanted something that I could present everything in one place and didn't have an assortment of ingredients. And I also did want a tree that was based on a full GEDCOM. Most of the ones that I had found previously that you could share, it was real hard to share a full GEDCOM. I wanted photo storage, of course, that didn't degrade my images. And I wanted to write about everybody that I wanted to write to, and have that information show up under that person or their family. Same with the images. I wanted to be able to attach images to multiple people instead of one or two. And I wanted some privacy from the entire internet world that allowed relatives still to be able to access it pretty easily with a password and to interact or contribute if they wanted. Finally, not quite 2 years ago, Simon Davies had the foresight to put all of those ingredients together. And that he created a platform called WeAre.xyz. And it was, to me, it's the best thing on the market right now. But what it allowed me to do is I can create my own family archive. It's not a research site. It's an archiving site. So you don't have all this competitive stuff over here interfering with what you're really trying to do, which is share your story. I have my entire GEDCOM up on WeAre of nearly 30,000 people. And it's in an interactive format like a database on your computer would be, so you can jump easily from person to person. And I can write about them. I can upload digital images of the documents that I'm writing about. And on the same page, I could transcribe what they are, translate what they are, and it can show side by side. Or I can pull that document on into an article about a specific person. You can tag anything with a name, a location, a special occasion, and that photo or document will show every single place without you having to go over here to look at this article or over there to look at that photo. It comes up under every single case where it's tagged, which is really fabulous. And that kind of interlinking allows such a fullness of story. You're able just to realize so much more about your ancestor's story or your own. For example, family heirloom, I can say what it is, where it came from, how it passed down in the family, who's got it today, what made it important. And it's going to pop up under every person or place that I mention. The other thing I really like that is so handy about WeAre is the site. My archive is fully exportable. I can download everything, my GEDCOM, the photos I've put up, the articles I've written, the documents I've shared. And for any of you that have put information up on the web and wanted to pull it back and can't do that easily, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You need something that will export, that you can back up what you've done. The other thing I have really loved with our WeAre is you can have multiple archives. You're not limited to just one. And I have really enjoyed it for living history, for being able to record my history since childhood. I'm working on that, but also my memories of my children growing up, and now my grandchildren, or trips, special occasions like graduation. So it's not just limited to ancestors. And you can invite relatives in at no cost to them. And everything that they see is not hidden in these file folders that they have to open. It's all face forward. It's a lot like a scrapbook feel to it.
Yeah. And you were describing to me separately that you'd actually created one whole archive with respect to multiple archives in WeAre. You have one whole archive is all about the family history. And then this living archives where you have a completely different strategy as far as what you publicly share, because these are all living people, right?
It is.
Yeah.
For example, my immediate family. I have a daughter who absolutely wants nothing about her child to be online, and a way to respect that was I could create an archive that is 100% private. And so we can share things back and forth within that archive, but nobody else has access to it. It's password protected, and only there's 6 of us that are currently active in there. So, it just makes it easy, but yet it's generating those stories. And I call it tomorrow's tree. Tomorrow, 20 years from now, when my grandchildren are grown, it'll probably get attached to another tree. But right now it has the privacy. Yeah.
Yeah. You've talked about a number of this interlinking thing that is just so different from a technology perspective to something that's going to be on a hard drive, and it's not an either or. It's just everything being able to get to everything else within the archive. Are there other features that just were surprising and delightful to you?
It's set up, first of all, it's very easy to use. You can write an article, and you can use a template if you prefer to follow one to tell somebody's story. But it's all set up in blocks. You can put in blocks of text, put your pictures, you can put them adjacent. You could be talking about, I could be talking about myself, and then I refer to my wedding. Well, I can just have a hyperlink that will immediately take somebody to the description of my wedding and photos from that time period with a link back. It's very easy. That was probably the thing I liked. The other thing I really liked about the archives, as far as inviting people in, this has been a real way to share information. So the ways I use it, or that you could use it, my immediate family obviously has access, but I have a brother-in-law who does research on my husband's line, and we are very interested in very different things. He's interested in military and land purchases. I'm much more interested in the stories and the photos and the documents that came along. We make a great picture together. So there's that. I have a third cousin. We actually have 2 ancestral lines in one location, separate ancestral lines, and we have 3 or 4 more back in history. So she's on there, and she has added all kinds of things. So instead of just my family's line story, we get this whole family plan picture, not only of the family, but of the area and everything else. So it's it's wonderful for inviting people in, and it's real flexible. Ultimately, you can be the only one. If you want your own private archive that's going to be passed on after you pass on, you can do that. Or you can invite an entire family branch in, or you can make it 100% public. It really is your choice.
You know what I love about this, describing this as a journey, is we've taken it in this half hour from the boxes and that question your dad asked all the way through considerations of technologies to where you are today, is describing it as you're describing the solution now and the way it's actually working is suddenly you're like, you know, imagine trying to explain to someone how you can't get anybody to answer your letters. But what if you could send it to them and they could just respond immediately? And now we just live that way. And here you're describing a transition. This is just a short-term transition over the last 30 years, but a transition to get to a stage where our materials are online and you've actually solved the problem of getting people to engage and get into it. Because that's in a way that manages your privacy and your access, your control over your materials. That's really lovely. I can't thank you enough for where we are. We've just passed our 30 minutes. There is so much more to discuss, but I think that's what we're going to take this into the after party. How about that? Is that all right? Thank you so much. All of you are very welcome to stay. This is for the convenience of our future viewers on our recording, the legacy of this event. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can just, there we go. Thank you.